members of Congress vividly remember the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, and many recall the trauma of finding shelter inside the House and Senate chambers while a mob swarmed the halls of Congress after breaching Capitol security barriers. Joining me now is Illinois Democratic Congresswoman Cheri Bustos, who is retiring from Congress in the wake of the insurrection. Thanks very much, Congresswoman, for joining us.
Thanks, Elaine.
So how did the events of January 6th affect you, and did that factor into your decision not to seek re-election?
Well, it impacted anybody who was on the House floor that day or on the Senate floor that day because, you don't expect to go into work and have an angry, vicious mob who's out to kill you and all of your colleagues show up at the workplace. That just doesn't happen every day. And Elaine, when you were showing that footage just before leading into our discussion, right now it's like I could feel my heart start to beat faster again. Every time I see the footage, that's how I feel. It was a life-changing experience. It's a stain on our democracy. And I'm married to the sheriff of Rock Island County, Illinois, and we have 3 sons. And universally, the 4 of them did not want me to run for re-election, with January 6, 2021 playing a direct impact on their recommendation to me. My husband said to me not long after that, he said, things are not going to get better out there. And it played into my decision. And it's, again, I think it's a horrible chapter in American history at this point.
Can you talk about that a bit more, Congresswoman? What did he base that warning on? Why would he feel that way, that things would get worse?
Well, if you're an elected official, especially at the federal level, we lived through and worked through the last 4 years of really unprecedented incivility, whether it be name calling, the president of the United States saying things like, the Chinese virus, knowing that violence was happening on the streets of America against Asian Americans. When he talked about countries in Africa, calling them, I don't like to swear, S-hole countries, from, the documented number of lies over the previous 4 years that led up to January 6th, to the biggest lie of all, claiming that President Biden is not actually our president. And all of that culminated to this violent, angry, vicious mob breaching the Capitol, pounding on the doors of my workplace on the floor of the House, wanting to do harm and even worse, wanting to disrupt democracy and prevent us from certifying the results of a free and fair election. So my husband, who's been in law enforcement for going on 40 years and being sheriff for the last 2+ terms, he's a realist about this. And look at the image right there that you have on the screen. This was not a normal day at the office. So it was kind of that incivility leading up to this day. And frankly, Elaine, the atmosphere in Washington, D.C. has not improved since January 6th.
So there may be people, though, who don't condone or endorse in any way violence and the kind of violence that took place at the Capitol, but they may sincerely have questions about the integrity of our elections. And since the 2020 election, we've seen multiple Republican-led state legislatures that have passed laws under that banner of election integrity. What is your sense of how Democrats and Republicans view that issue?
Well, I think that there is a sincere belief by some people that is not based in fact that there were shenanigans that happened in the presidential election. There have been deep dives in some of the states now where these claims have been made, and it's gotten all the way to the point now, to your reference that you just made, 19 states have actually passed 30-some laws that will constrict voting rights. I happen to see it a very, very different way. I don't object to being able to show some kind of identification if you're going in. So if you were going to the polls, you want to show, I'm Elaine, and I'm going to prove that I'm Elaine before I vote. I don't have any problem with that because that is just, one extra precaution to make sure that who's voting is the person who says they're voting. But these laws that say you can't pass out water in the southern states when you've got long lines of voters waiting to cast their ballot, it makes no sense to reduce the number of days that you can have early voting, to prohibit mail-in voting. Those are kind of things that just get in the way of people's the ability to vote in an easy way that is a safe way. I see it as we should make voting as easy and safe, meaning secure, as possible. And I think that every American ought to look at the motives of somebody who wants to really get in the way of people's voting rights, because that's not the American way. And, I always... I was on an airplane flying home right after the insurrection, and I will call it an attempted coup. I do not think that's an overstatement. And I was on an airplane flying from Washington, D.C. to Chicago before I went to my home in Moline. And one row in front of me, a woman stood up when we were, what are you, 30,000 feet above the air, probably somewhere over the state of Ohio, and started a mini Trump rally on an airplane. Told everybody to take off their masks, yelled out, "Patriots, Patriots, when you get home, we can't let this stop. We want you to invade your county Republican Party like the communists have invaded the Democratic Party." I mean, this is happening in the middle of an airplane where nobody there who had nothing to do with that insurrection had to sit there and live through that. I mean, this is some of the behavior that people think is okay, and it is not okay. And average, everyday Americans have to say this kind of behavior is not okay. Violence in government is not okay. Let's try to get back to some kind of normalcy and civility and get the job done.
We're speaking at a time when the January 6th House Select Committee is continuing its work, and there remains a significant portion of Americans and even some members of Congress who assert that the violence on January 6th was the result of left-wing agitators, despite federal officials saying they do not have any evidence to support that claim. So no matter how comprehensive it may be, do you believe that any report from the January 6th committee has the potential to pierce those beliefs, to change anyone's mind?
Well, we have to continue to seek the truth. It's what you do for a living, right? You wouldn't be a journalist if you didn't value truth. It's what I did for a living for close to 2 decades. I was a journalist, and you always know that your guiding light in your North Star is the truth. That is what the Select Committee is doing right now. They are seeking the truth of what happened before January 6th, on January 6th, and after January 6th. And I'm so pleased that Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, my colleague in the state of Illinois, are part of that. So it's bipartisan. We have Republican representation. We have Democratic representation. We have outstanding members of the U.S. Congress who are serving on that Select Committee, the cream of the crop, who have only one desire, and that is to get to the truth. I hope and pray that the American public will listen and will pay attention to what comes out of that Select Committee. And I applaud all of their work and am very proud of each and every one of them for their constant pursuit of the truth around January 6th.
You mentioned your Republican colleague, Adam Kinzinger, one of the few Republicans to place blame for the January 6th attack on former President Trump's shoulders. He's also not seeking re-election. Well, he posted this on Twitter Wednesday morning. Let's take a look.
What we do in the days ahead will determine whether America moves away from January 6th or moves towards an even bigger crisis. It matters how we vote, not just in the big elections, but in primaries too. A lot of people think their vote won't make a difference, but believe me, it does. Your vote can make all the difference for America's future. But you got to show up first.
What do you make of his comments, and do you have any inclination of his future plans?
I would say, yay, Adam Kinzinger. He's exactly right. He didn't throw out. I mean, we know Adam is a Republican, and he's a conservative Republican. Our views on probably the vast majority of issues are, I'm here and he's here. But look, he is a good man. He's standing up for what's right, and it takes a lot of guts to do what he and Liz Cheney are doing.